January 21st, 2019. Yes, I'm wearing my shipped shirt and my Yosemite Conservancy hat. Today's Monday. Every other Monday, I volunteer as a goat milker for a educational farm called Vita Verde Education, which does amazing things, bringing California public school students into the outdoors to experience nature through farming and animals and connecting with food sources and hiking and just experiencing that. And I realize what a huge, valuable, precious, amazing gift that is. And, I'm so amazed that I live in a place where I get to even see nature, the natural world in my visual field. That is a privilege. I get the contrast of being just steps from the ocean most of the time, and then driving 30 minutes and being in a total concrete urban jungle suburban wasteland, which is soul sucking to me. Suburban life with the concrete sidewalks and streets and the houses one after another. And it's where I grew up. I grew up in the Midwest in a suburb, classic American, making it. That was the aspiration and the goal and the success of a whole generation. And then I was supposed to aspire to whatever's after that, which is, I guess, a nicer subdivision with maybe a gate around it or some kind of deterrent to unsavory activities. I don't know. Fancier cars in the driveways, kids with more scheduled activities, more expensive schools. I don't know what the aspiration is beyond it. But what I've found is, for me, the aspiration beyond suburban wasteland is to connect with the majesty of nature, figure out a way to weave that into life and to keep that in your view. And, in our kind of grind of building things and keeping up all the juggling balls that we're keeping in the air in our modern lifestyles, it's so easy to skip that nature step. And I keep my volunteering every other Monday because it's a stake in the ground where I have no choice. I don't have to make time for it. It's there. It's scheduled for me. It's time when I go and I put on my tall rubber boots and muck around in the goat poop, see my chickens, who I donated to Vita Verde when I moved from my house because I no longer have a viable yard space for chickens at this current house. But chickens, so it's like all of a sudden they were gone, and I saw them today, and I just realized, wow, that they were such a big part of my life. And sometimes it was really hard to make the time to, care for them every day. Like that, there's like no stopping that. That's the beauty of raising a living thing, right? It's why people have kids, probably. But they were a huge part of my life. I would see them every day, and I'm so glad I captured them in my art. I have like stacks and drawers of sketchbooks filled with drawings of various funny things that my chickens did, which they'll never do again because those were specific behaviors to the flock and to me and to our backyard and to that time. I watch them now, and they every time I see them, they're a little bit different. They found a different sub clique of chickens. They're in a flock of about 40 or 50 right now, and they were always in a flock of 6 or smaller when they were with me. And so they had these very it was like going from private tutoring to like urban public high school for these chickens. So they have to deal with a lot more different personalities, some grumpy old chickens and some just pre-formed social groups, and they're making their way into it. And I just love seeing that. And one of them, Henrietta James, she's a barred rock, Plymouth barred rock. That's the black and white kind of checkered, stripy looking one. She still approaches me every time I go, and sometimes squats down and lets me pick her up, which is what she always loved for me to do when she lived with me. So I had a little moment with my Henrietta, And of course, the goats have their own little idiosyncrasies. And I keep marveling at the fact that animals have their own intelligence. I don't know who was telling me before I got my chickens that no, chickens are stupid or dumb. And I, having been a chicken lady for 4 years, raising flocks of all the way from, several day old chicks all the way up to, 4-year-olds. They're not dumb at all. They have their own intelligence and awareness. And I'm always listening to the animals when I'm with them. Like if the goats are not cooperating, it's something's going on with them. They're protecting themselves. They're in pain, or maybe they have a slight infection coming on or something. There's always an intelligence to the behavior of an animal, including humans. However, we're the only species on the planet that has the ability to override the intelligence of our bodies and just come up with zany ideas, and at the detriment of our own selves. And that's what I was noticing today, because one of the goats was not wanting to get up on the stanchion. And I don't pull and drag the animals anymore, but I had to get her up there. And she finally went, but then she slipped and kind of flipped forward. And I realized that the stanchion wasn't wide enough for her. She's a big goat, big girl. And so she prefers the other milking station. I think that's the dimensions are better for her, so she won't slip and sort of get her hooves caught in the feeding area and stuff. So I had that moment of like, oh, sorry, I didn't really listen. I didn't hear what you were trying to say, and I'm sorry, and I'll listen more next time. And I got that chance, and it's so amazing to have those moments of awareness. Because unfortunately, we've like distorted human behavior so far away from instinct in our nature, like our intuitive intelligence that protects us as organisms, protects the integrity of our bodies, which is health, right? And I equate health of the body with such, a harmony and an integrity of being, just like in the animal kingdom. And that I totally believe we have that. And yet, oh my God, every aspect of modern life and everything that's flooding our senses and what's being demanded of us in terms of multitasking completely assaults that intelligence. And I'm experimenting with working as a shopper for Shipt, which is one of the home delivery grocery shopping services on the market. It's an app. And so I'm like not used to having to respond to my phone all the time, but that's how you accept orders. When they come in, you have to say yes or no, or you don't get work. But I made this this realization today because I've realized I've never worked in a job or been in any situation where I actually have a finite task to complete and it's defined, right? Like there's a beginning and an end, and there's now you're done and you can move on now. And there's some endpoint that someone can be satisfied with. I have never worked in a job like that. I have never, even like maybe you could go back to school and say like math or problem sets in science or something had an answer, but I never got satisfaction from getting those things right. I was just like, God damn it, I got to get these things done. But in terms of work where there's a reward, like getting paid to do something, I've always worked in teaching or in medicine or in the investment world where there are these undefined, perpetual, lifelong professional development tasks, right? So there's no end to the learning that you can do. There's no end to the interaction with the medical care system. Like you're never done. There's always something else that could come up. And when you say goodbye to a patient, like sending them home from the hospital, or even like we're done with your appointment today, like they're coming back unless, they're dead. But even then there's issues to deal with, right? With death. So it's a new experience to me to experience completion. And this is a gift I'm giving to myself, which is like, I can do this. I need to experience this in my life, that it is possible to have a task where I go and it's like, here's what you're going to do, Lisa. And when you get it right and you do it on time, you're done. And somebody can be happy that you did that and you can get paid for it and you can move on. That is so foreign to me that I don't even have the vocabulary to give that to myself. Like, oh, that was good. Okay, good job. Let's move on. I don't even really. So I'm trying to feed that to myself. And I made this kind of tongue-in-cheek list of criteria for myself for acceptable employment / income streams, including my own business, that I'm learning now. So what are the criteria? One, I set my own schedule. This is why I quit REI so many years ago. Not because anything about the working. I loved the work at REI. I loved the exposure that I got to these brands and these founders and the product innovations and trends in the industry and just supporting the outdoors and getting people educated before they go in the outdoors. I loved being there. But what really didn't work for me for what I wanted to do in my life was the way retail scheduling goes, which is 2 weeks in advance. You get your schedule and you might find out you're working on the weekends or not. So you can't make plans. And I have a lot of things I want to do. I'm fine with carving out time to do certain jobs, but I need to be able to set my schedule. So that's huge. 2, which I came up with today, does not require unwarranted self-righteousness. So I think what drains me a lot about the marketing involved in life coaching, at least how I've conceptualized it, and I think that obviously I have I need to reframe that or kind of come up with an issue, a different way to come up with a different way of thinking about it. But it's the self-righteousness that's required to write anything as a life coach and like make it be useful to people, or somehow point back to my wisdom or theirs or something. Like, that is just draining for me to have to wear all the time. Sometimes it comes up for me to come up with those things, but as a constant, ongoing, never-ending process, I haven't gotten there yet. Third is, I don't have to find all the customers all the time. And I've talked about this before, how that constant process of presenting myself in public as, this is what I do and this is what I think about all the time doesn't work for me. And then number 4, that there's a clear endpoint to the tasks required, i.e. satisfaction is actually possible. So that's another thing with life coaching. I mean, you could define with a client, like, what is the outcome that you want? But even then, it's like defining satisfaction, there's very nebulous. And it's not the problem of subjectivity, because when you shop for somebody, they have choices, and subjectivity really helps. It's like, what do you want me to do? Just tell me, and then we're all good as long as, I do what you say. With all of the fields like teaching, all the fields that I'm attracted to have very high burnout rates. How interesting. Doctoring, teaching, therapy or coaching or supporting people, very high burnout rates because of, I think, this last factor, that basically there's no definable endpoint. It's not through the fault of anyone. In fact, the attempts to define endpoints by corporatizing medicine or measuring student progress in teaching, as an example, have actually destroyed any vestige of satisfaction that the professionals got from it, because it came from this unmeasurable process of seeing someone change, seeing someone grow, seeing someone light up and get something or have a new insight and a new view of themselves that they've never had before. None of those things are predictable and measurable. They're perceived through the senses of two people in presence with one another. But there's no definable way outside of that relationship that an outsider could measure it. And that is the challenge of the core of those services, which are profoundly valuable and essential and necessary for human development, and squarely are at odds with everything that's measured here and makes for a good app. I don't care what they're saying about meditation apps, empathy apps, whatever. The experience of human relations with other humans must happen between humans in the messy space of being together in the presence of humans in the real world. And yeah, it sucks because it's not neat, it's not clearly measurable, and there's no end point. And I live right here in Silicon Valley, where the whole fortune of many, the entire ecosystem has been built on eradication of problems that and disruptive solutions, right? So I kind of like came up with this funny t-shirt idea as I was driving. I'm like, how about disrupt death? Peter Thiel, a bunch of other people are investing, chunks of their billions on eradicating the problem of death, which is just so funny. It's almost like they tossed a bunch of words into a jar, drew them out, and just put disrupt in front of them and said, hey, let's invest in that. That sounds like a cool thing to do because we can't think of anything else to do with our time, because we're not going to just work for one of our app companies doing actually quite satisfying work doing menial tasks for people, because we have to hold on to our self-righteousness. So I'm doing my healing right now through this kind of menial activity, but very meaningful and instructive for me personally, doing this shopping and coming back and having actually a lot more energy to put into my writing, which is my focus right now, focused on. And I am just wanting to record that, hey, I'm enjoying this right now. And I give myself permission to step down from the self-righteous pedestal that has been bequeathed and inherited by me and internalized for whatever crazy, stupid reason. But it's okay. Like, our enthusiasm is telling us something. Our enthusiasm has intelligence. There's my little quip of the day. There's my wisdom. There's my self-righteousness. Our enthusiasm has intelligence. Have a good one.